This meeting will not air live on Spectrum 180. However, please join us on Henry County Government Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Henry County BOC. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, a total of 10 minutes will be allowed for anyone wishing to speak in favor of a case and 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they must share in a 10-minute slot. I will now do the invocation and pledge. Heavenly Father, we come before you thanking you for this evening. We thank you for another year. And we ask that you continue to be with us. We ask that you guide our decisions in this board meeting and be with us. These things we ask. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is now called to order. Do I have an acceptance of the amended agenda, which would include the nominations and elections and a reordering of cases?
I'll make a motion that we accept the agenda as you mentioned.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Okay. At this point, do we have a nomination for a chairperson?
I would like to nominate Delander Nelson as chairman.
Okay, I have a nomination. Do we have a second?
I second the nomination.
Okay, we have a nomination and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. I'd like to nominate Ms. Susan King as vice chair. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, have a nomination and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right. I'd like to make a nomination for secretary of Stacy Jordan Rodasier.
I'll
I
second that.
Okay, I have a nomination and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries. We have a nomination and a second for, we have a nomination for chair of Delander Nelson and it's been motion and carried. Susan King as vice chair and Stacy Jordan Rudisier as secretary.
So noted.
Okay. At this point, staff, do you have any recommendations?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we just have a couple of comments. We want to note and welcome Ms. Dawn Randolph to our Zoning Advisory Board representing Henry County at large. Ms. Randolph, welcome to you. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. I'm excited to join you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Also, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to note that there was some confusion earlier this week about which commission district one of our zoning cases is in. Our first case is a variance for a Chick-fil-A. And I just want to note for the record that this location is in District 3. And that concludes our planning staff comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, Stacy, being that you said that, I have one question. Now, was it, and I'm pretty sure it was, but was it advertised in District 3?
Yes, sir. It was advertised in District 3, but there was an error in one of our documents. And so we just want to make it clear for the record that this property is indeed in District 3.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, we will move forward with the cases. We call the first case, please.
The first case is a variance, VR 2019, Chick-fil-A Incorporated, Georgia. Request a variance from development standards for property located on Highway 155 North, south of East Lake Parkway, in land lot 27 of the 7th District. The property consists of 1.173 plus or minus acres, and the request is for future commercial development in District 3, and is presented by Kamal Asalam.
Okay.
Good evening, Chair and board members.
Good evening.
Give me just a second to get the PowerPoint together. Can everybody see that clearly?
Uh,
I can't see anything.
no, it's not there.
For sure.
No, I can't see anything.
No,
And
I
I'm from
can see
District
you.
3.
How about that?
There we are.
Okay,
I don't
great.
think they can hear you. I don't
So you-
think it's connected.
Mr.
Everybody hear me
Chairman,
clearly?
I'm not so sure you can hear me.
We can hear you, Miss. We
Okay.
can hear you.
The variance request in front of you is for property located on Highway 155 North, south of East Lake. The property is within the Highway Corridor Overlay District. It's currently Zone C2 and is 1.173 plus or minus acres. The applicant is requesting relief from front yard setback requirements. The subject property is highlighted in green and is situated in between the Wendy's and Advanced Auto Parts on Highway 155 North. The slide shows the proposed site plan that Chick-fil-A has submitted for permitting. As you can see, the proposed building is facing vertically along the Highway 155 rather than the standard horizontal orientation. Because of the size and dimensions of the lot, the applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the front yard setback requirements from 50 feet to 34 feet for the main structure and to reduce the front yard setback requirements from 15 feet to 11 feet for the drive-through canopy. This will allow the building to be situated vertically to create more space and maximize the use of the parcel. Given the criteria for variances and the characteristics of the request, there is a reasonable basis for granting the variance request for relief from front yard setback requirements. As such, staff recommends approval of the request with the condition that the variance is only applicable to the currently proposed site plan. Any deviation from the site plan, sale of the property before construction, or destruction of the structure will forfeit the variance. Thank you, and I will be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff? Does any of the board members have questions for staff?
I have no question.
Okay. Well, if not, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please.
Hi, this is Bridget Ganter from Bowman Consulting, and I'm representing Chick-fil-A. We're the civil firm working on the site plan. We submitted this variance because due to recent events and just the overwhelming popularity of the Chick-fil-A drive-thrus, all Chick-fil-A's are now being designed with dual lanes. In addition, they are moving away from the traditional drive-through layout, and you can see this if you compare the drive-through that Wendy's has with the drive-through that Chick-fil-A has. We believe that it's safer. No pedestrians have to cross the drive-through to go from parking into the building. And it also allows for a much larger stack of cars. The goal is to get cars in and out of the drive-through as quickly as possible and to not have the drive-through back up into the access road. The dual lane allows the operator flexibility to either fill up both lanes during very peak periods of the drive-through or to use cones or delineators to bring it back down to one lane as needed. But most importantly, it allows for the team members to kind of direct traffic and move the slow orders off to the side so that people can get around them, and also so that orders may be placed at multiple points. So it's no longer, a single order window and a single pickup window. In fact, there is no order window or pickup window. It's a order area where multiple cars are placing their mobile orders with team members out in the drive-through. And then the same for the pickup area. There's a door and team members deliver cars directly, or delivers meals directly to the cars. And Chick-fil-A has found that this is much more efficient. We can get vehicles in and out much more quickly, and it's a much safer layout for pedestrians moving from the parking lot into the building. This particular lot is angled also. So in addition to the 50-foot setback and, kind of the narrow dimensions, it's angled in both corners at the front. So that further cuts down the area that is available for a building. What Chick-fil-A would really like to do is just present the best Chick-fil-A we can for Henry County. So the most drive-through stack, get vehicles in and out as quickly as possible, and also allow for a safe restaurant experience.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicant? Okay. Well, at this time, Karis, do we have anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we have anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, does the board have additional questions for staff or the applicant? Okay. If there is no additional questions, we would like to I want to make sure that I checked everyone. Does the board, anyone have any questions? Okay. Well, we'd like to call a case, please.
VR 2019 Chick-fil-A Incorporated of Atlanta, Georgia, request a variance from development standards for property located on Highway 155 North, south of East Lake Parkway, in land lot 27 of the 7th District. The property consists of 1.173 plus or minus acres, and the request is for future commercial development in District 3, presented by Kamal Al-Salam.
Okay, we've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the requested variance as presented by staff and the applicant.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a motion by Mr. Risher. We have a second by Ms. Walker. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. We call the next case, please.
The next case is a conditional use, CU 2005, for Alexander Kilbrew of Atlanta, Georgia, request a conditional use for the property located at 567 Flat Rock Road in land lot 65 of the 11th District. The property consists of 24.68 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a commercial kennel in District 4, presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisill.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Good evening.
I am going to attempt to share my screen. Okay, Mr. Chair, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this subject property is located on Flat Rock Road. It is over 24 acres, as illustrated on the slide in your exhibit books. The property is zoned RA, residential agricultural, and immediate neighbors are also zoned RA, residential agricultural.
Yeah.
The proposed use of the property is for a kennel, and the applicant has proposed to us that they intend to have services including dog daycare for other clients' animals, as well as overnight boarding. And this sort of use meets the Unified Land Development's definition for a commercial kennel, and commercial kennels require a conditional use permit, which is why we're having the hearing tonight. There's a second hearing that will take place immediately following this hearing regarding an ordinance amendment that the applicant is requesting. For commercial type conditional uses, the development under these zoning entitlements, planning staff does require compliance with commercial development standards. Much like for a commercial daycare center or for a church, commercial kennels also require compliance with commercial standards. But this is going to be the subject of our next hearing. Staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and we have determined that because of the large property, the fact that it is zoned residential, agricultural, and if it's developed in accordance with the commercial standards, staff does recommend approval with conditions. And Mr. Chair, I'd be pleased to answer questions.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff? Okay. I want to make sure that give everyone time to.
Question. I just have one question. How far is the kennel going to be away from any kind of residence or anything? Because I mean, the dogs and the noise and the smell, I just want to make sure all that's been addressed.
Yes, ma'am. So it's my understanding that the existing home will continue to be used as a residence, but then also an office, and that an accessory structure will be retrofitted for the actual kennels where the dogs will be boarded and so forth. It's also my understanding that this really can't be seen from the roadway, and I really wouldn't expect that this would be able to be seen from the property line. As far as the noise go, of course, we know that noise carries, and there's hardly anything that could be done about the noise, especially in the outdoor runs. But with a property that's over 24 acres, we really wouldn't be able to require anything more. It exceeds the minimum acreage for a commercial kennel.
Okay, I just have one other question. I was wondering approximately how many dogs or animals do they foresee being there at the maximum? How many dogs could they accommodate?
And Ms. Walker, that might be a better question for the applicant, but it's staff's understanding that there will be 4 kennels in the accessory structure, but the applicant could clarify that for us.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions for staff? Stacy, I have one question, and that is, have we had any opposition, any letters to come into your office?
Mr. Chair, I myself am not aware of any letters that have been mailed to the Planning and Zoning Office.
Okay. Any additional questions for staff? Okay, if there's no additional question, we would like the applicant to come forward, and please state your name and address for the record. Karis, do you know if the applicant has logged in?
And Mr. Chair, Alex Killebrew is our applicant,
Okay,
and it indicates that he's not muted, but apparently we are not able to hear.
okay.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Alex Killebrew. The address. Sorry, you were asking to state two things here for you.
Yes, please state your name and address for the record and give us anything that you would like to add to staff recommendation.
Yeah. My name is Alex Killebrew. 567 Flat Rock Road, Stockbridge, Georgia. I actually do have an attorney here to speak on the behalf. It would be Greg Hecht, who should be listed on here as well.
Okay.
If y'all could unmute him.
Okay, well, you guys have a total of 10 minutes to present this case, so if he's logged on, you can proceed and he can come on at any time.
Yes, sir. If he looks like he has his hand raised now, but he's on mute.
Okay.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I can't seem to also get it's not showing my picture. That's okay.
Okay.
Well, if we can, Mr. Chairman and members, we appreciate the opportunity to be here on behalf of Alex Killebrew. And Alex is here as well. Let me see if this will help us. There we are. It just wouldn't let me on for a minute.
Okay.
Alex loves dogs. He worked for another doggy daycare back in Douglas County. He's worked on his grandfather's farm with dogs. And this doggy daycare would, I think, initially start with just about 10 to 15 dogs or so to start with. And I don't know if we can share our screen or not, but let me see if I can do that. I think Mr. Jordan's going to come here in a minute and help us with that. Can you see? Let's see, I'll share this. Can you see this right now? Can you see what we're sharing our screen with?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look, this is a house, and it's in RA. And as you can see, it's going to be a very small business that is way off the street. I mean, you'll see in a second a little long drive. It's probably 0.2 to a quarter mile off the street, where it's very isolated, but a beautiful place for dogs. And one of the nice things is Alex is just going to be picking them up and bringing them to the home where this small business will be. And so there's really not going to be traffic even in and out of his location. And I know there's another presentation about whether or not we have to be part of the infrastructure issue or not. But you'll see that in the next, I don't know if you can see this, that may help. Because this is being called a commercial development, even though it's out of a house, it's going to require Alex to actually build a deceleration lane. This is the estimate for that. It's $125,230 to open up at a collateral business out of a house. So if anything ends up being a small business now out of a house, and it's going to be termed a commercial development, everybody from a barber to someone that is doing cosmetics to someone that is an accountant, someone that is doing whatever, is going to have to spend about 125 grand to get a decel lane if it's termed a commercial development out of the house, according to the new reg. And we're very worried about that. Now, this is a climate controlled house. It's going to have, the dogs are going to be treated very well because Alex loves dogs. They're going to have some beds. There'll be stalls that are going to be made out of the house. There is going to be some privacy fencing that's going to be built with the house, price outside of the house, so that even the fencing is there is going to be more structured, so that it, even though it really only needs about 2 or 3 of the acres out of the 24, and it'll be very private. It'll be even more private with the privacy fence. I think even 70% of the property is in an unbuildable floodplain, so you're not going to have much more use. And it's a beautiful way for someone that loves dogs to go and pick up dogs, help people while they're out of town, and brings them to his house. And I think one of the, I'm not sure if there are any questions, but I know Alex is there too, and he can address some issues maybe that he wants to, but it's certainly compatible with a small business, and it's certainly off the roadway a long way. Staff has recommended approval of the conditional use permit, and I did. And we would be grateful for your approval of that. And I know we'll get to the text amendment next. And I don't know if Alex wants to address the board on this part of the motion as well. Alex, are you there?
Hey, I'm there. Sorry about that. I was on mute. I would like to add a note where, Greg, you mentioned, so at the beginning, as far as things go, it would absolutely be probably about up to 15 or 20 dogs. Ideally to grow a bit larger than that, but not over about 40 dogs.
Alex, we're losing your sound there. I can't.
I'm sorry. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, Alex, at the bottom also, there's a button that'll allow you to do video. It wasn't allowing me to access it earlier, but now it is. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, no.
Oh, he's on mute again.
You're on mute, though, now. I know. You're still on mute.
Not on mute, but can't hear.
Now we can't hear you.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect.
We did it. So I don't know how much of that y'all were able to hear before, but especially at the start, Greg mentioned that it would be probably about 15 to 20 dogs. That would be in the starting range with eventual increase, but most likely never above a total of 40 dogs on a holiday or something like that. But that would only be in extenuating circumstances.
Okay. Anything else you guys would like to add to that?
I think you spoke to your neighbor and who had no objections, as I remember.
Oh, and he was willing to sign a document as to that effect, specifying that he had no objections to the dog daycare business being there, and that those would be the closest proximity neighbors who are still several hundred yards away, not
Okay.
not clearly visible through the woods.
All right. Now, does the board have questions for the applicant?
I do.
Okay, Ms. King.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of questions. 4 kennels you mentioned total. I'm guessing because your maximum was 40 dogs, 10 per kennel?
Yes, so they're not traditional kennels in the sense that you might think of when you think of a kennel. It would be more large spaces, I believe about 100 to 110 square feet rooms. Not so much as a small 5x4 kennel that you would think of or associate with the word.
Okay. I have 2 dogs here at home, and some days for me that's a lot to handle.
Sure.
They're just Shih Tzus, but I'm saying, so are you going to be doing this by yourself, or you're going to have people help you, I guess? 15 to 20 dogs.
Eventually employees would be added. It won't be me with 40 dogs. I can guarantee you that much.
Will it be you with 15 dogs? One person with 15 dogs?
I would probably start adding help once I'm beginning to get closer to double digits. In the previous spot that I worked was much larger, so I'm more than comfortable working with that many dogs. However, I don't want to put myself in that situation because it adds additional risk to the dogs themselves.
Right. So you live in Atlanta. You live in Atlanta?
So my in-laws live in Atlanta, which is where the he helps me with some of the formalized business operations. I am in Stockbridge.
Oh, you are. Okay. So
I purchased this property back in June.
okay. Now, are these dogs going to be spending the night at all? Will this be overnight or just like day?
This will be daycare and boarding.
Okay.
And
so
boarding is an
option. You will stay on the property at night?
Myself or an employee if I'm not available.
If you don't stay on the property, what time in the evening would you leave and return in the morning?
There should always be someone on the property with the dogs.
Okay.
Just be myself.
Okay. So how will you market this business? I'm guessing to just the Henry County area. Well, Fairview, Ellenwood, a little bit of Clayton.
So primarily, it'll be word of mouth marketing. Right now, the target is somewhat inside the perimeter right now, bringing dogs out. However, we are open to branching out into the Stockbridge and surrounding area.
So you're not going to market to Stockbridge. You're going to be marketing more in town. Is that what I heard you say? Okay. And what vehicle will you use to transport the dogs?
So currently it's a slightly mostly empty Chevrolet Tahoe with plans to add additional vehicles as expansion requires.
So, okay, that's fine. You put the dogs in the back, or do you have containers for them?
It is an open back seat with a pad at the bottom to make sure that there's not any sort of contact with anything that could harm the dogs.
So I'm guessing based on what you just told us, you kind of already have maybe a customer base that you're aware of, or that
I just have experience because my previous job in Douglas County was the same business model.
I see. And is there a reason that you don't want to market to the Stockbridge area initially?
I just purchased the house. I originally lived in Atlanta, so I don't have like I said, my goal is word of mouth expansion because it allows for natural slow growth, and I'm not inundated with requests all at once. And so it's more of a lack of back in June.
Okay, I'm trying to think if I have any other questions. Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Does any other board members have questions for the applicant?
I do. This is Dawn
Okay,
Randolph.
Miss. Yes.
Yes. Mr. Killebrew, will the animals be in climate controlled areas or will these be outdoor pens?
No, man. They will be. It's It will be a climate-controlled space. They won't sleep outside. The only times they will be outside are during daylight hours.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Well, I don't have any questions at this time. I may have a questions after. At this time, we would like to allot anyone wishing to speak in favor of this case 10 minutes. Well, I misspoke. Not 10 minutes. Well, our time is up. So at this point, do we have anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Karis, do we have anyone waiting?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff? Ms. King? Yeah, I think you're muted now.
I have a question, Ms. Walker. Noreen,
Okay.
have you heard from any residents regarding this? No. Okay,
Okay, I have go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. I have a question for staff. There was a question about the decel lane. That was brought to our attention, but the board doesn't have any control over that decel lane. If I'm speaking correctly, that's based on DOT. Am I correct?
So, Mr. Chair, let me just state that I'm very happy to answer the question, but it appeared that Ms. Walker was trying to speak, but she was muted. And I'd like to yield to Ms. Walker if that's appropriate, or I could go ahead and answer your question, whatever's most appropriate.
Okay. Ms. Walker? Walker, I think you're still muted.
Okay, let me see. I don't know why I should.
I hear you now.
Okay. No, let him go on and speak. I want to hear what he says.
Okay.
Okay. So we would note that this business seems to be represented by the applicant as being something akin to an accessory type use to the principal use of the property as remaining residential and agricultural, but our ordinance does not provide for that. So having a commercial kennel is no type of home occupation, if you will. This is a genuine commercial business. It has employees. The applicant himself will not live there. We have heard from the applicant that the owners, the clients, they will not visit the site, but I can tell you that it would be nearly impossible for staff to monitor that and to make sure that that is actually the case. And even though the applicant seems very earnest about this business, it is the case that if this conditional use is approved, that it could be transferred to another party who may not have the same good intentions. And the only thing that we could hold them to would be the conditions and the fact that the development of the site would have to meet a commercial standard. So we do this because this is not a home-based business. This is a commercial business. The reason that a deceleration lane is required is because of the functional classification of Flat Rock Road. And to answer your question, Mr. Chair, the Zoning Advisory Board could evaluate the applicant's request for a variance from development standards. However, this is not something that is a varianceable item, for lack of a better phrase. And so I believe the applicant knows that we would recommend denial of this. And in fact, our Unified Land Development Code states that a request for a variance that is not a varianceable item should be treated as an ordinance amendment. And indeed, our next hearing is the applicant's request for an ordinance amendment. So the applicant is trying to do the right thing. But yes, this board would be able to evaluate such a request. But as far as the commercial standards are concerned, we're looking at a deceleration lane. We're looking at a commercial driveway where cars can meet and not have to pull off of the driveway, a commercial parking lot, and so forth. So, and as staff, we're not just looking at this particular applicant, but we're looking in the future how this property could be used for the approved conditional use also in the future.
Okay. Now, Stacy, the question is, has we involved DOT, and what was their recommendation?
Yes, so the county DOT is the one who makes it happen. They are where the rubber meets the road. And so as this property moves forward, a development permit will be required. And at that time, all of the improvements will be required of the applicant.
Okay. All right. All right. Does the board have any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. Well, let me say this. I see the applicant attorney raising his hand, so I want to give you a chance to speak. Go ahead. I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Am I unmuted now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So, as I understand it, staff has recommended approval of the CUP, but they put a third condition on it requiring the decel lane. We're asking for the board to approve the CUP without that third condition because, frankly, it'll kill the project because nobody can justify a $125,000 expenditure starting with 15 to 20 dogs or any amount of dogs for a pickup and drop off basically what is going to be a very small business out of a house. But the other thing is the real area to deal with this would next be at the text amendment stage. I believe the standard would require the decel anyway without the condition, but Stacy Jordan's as good as it gets. I mean, he knows I'm a big fan of his and a friend, and I think the world of him, so he'll know better than anybody. But okay. My concern though is if you approve this with that condition, it's for anybody. These small businesses are not viable. You can't. I don't care whether it's an accountant or whether it's a barber or out of a house or whether it's a CPA or whatever. Nobody can afford this. It's literally unaffordable.
I understand, and I understand. You're arguing a case. I can fully understand that, but the board just doesn't set the rules. But I'll ask this: Does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff?
Excuse me, I just want to get some clarity. So the recommendation is that we do not have the ability to waive this deceleration lane. Am I correct?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could answer that.
Yeah.
The board has a lot of say in that. And the applicant is correct that the standard for a commercial establishment on a road with a functional classification of Flat Rock Road would be required to put in the deceleration lane regardless. And it would have to meet intersection separation standards regardless, and it would have to meet sight distance standards regardless. The third condition that's placed on there would negate any ordinance amendment that this board may recommend approval of. But the recommendation of the ordinance amendment, which is our next hearing, is simply a recommendation from this board, and it would go on to the Board of Commissioners for a final determination to be approved or denied. But regardless, if that third condition is on there, the intention of conditions is to go beyond the minimum standard of the code. And so they would have to put the deceleration lane on there anyway. The applicant is correct about that.
So I'm obviously hoping that for this small business, we're not going to have to go beyond it. Was that? And leave it up to DOT.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hyde. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. If there's no additional question, we would like to call, please.
Conditional use, CU 2005, Alexander Killebrew of Atlanta, Georgia. Request a conditional use for the property located at 567 Flat Rock Road in land lot 65 of the 11th District. The property consists of 24.68 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a commercial kennel in District 4, presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisill, Chief Planner.
Okay, we've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion based on the recommendation of the board to approve it, and then we go on to the second phase about the variance.
Well, yeah. If they need a variance.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Three. Mr. Richard, how do you, I think I can hear you.
Denied.
I have
denied.
We have three
Denied.
yeas and two nays at this point. Okay, motion. Am I correct? I have Mr. VM, Ms. Randolph, and Ms. Walker as a. Motion carries. Okay. Call the next case, please.
Unified Land Development Code Amendment, ULDC AM 2003, Alexander Killebrew of Atlanta, Georgia, requests to amend multiple sections of the Henry County Unified Land Development Code, ULDC, regulating animal care facilities in the RA Residential Agricultural Zoning District. This is countywide, presented by Kenta Lanham, Planner 2.
Give me just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and board members.
Good afternoon.
The request in front of you is to amend the Unified Land Development Code regarding commercial kennels and other animal care facilities within the RA Residential Agricultural Zoning District. Highlighted in red on the screen are the proposed changes to the ULDC. The proposed change is to exempt commercial kennels and other animal care facilities in the RA zoning district from the commercial development standards. As proposed by the applicant, this would only be the case when the animals are taken to and from the property by a faculty employee, with the facility not being accessible to the customers or the general public. The ULDC currently requires commercial kennels and other animal care facilities to meet a commercial standard. Commercial kennels are not permitted as a home occupation. The presence of a commercial kennel at this property, given that it's zoned RA, would effectively change the land use of the property from residential to commercial. Perhaps I should speak a little bit more generally. The presence of a commercial kennel on any property would change the land use of the property from, for example, residential to commercial. Furthermore, it may be problematic in administering and monitoring the limitations of public access in such cases. And there are also concerns regarding the safety of the employees and the animals of the facility. Due to those aforementioned reasons, staff recommends denial of the applicant's request to amend the Unified Land Development Code. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff? Okay. Again, does the board have questions for staff? Okay, if not, we'd like the applicant to come forward again, state your name and address for the record once again, and explain if you have anything additional like you would like to add to staff recommendation.
Alex, do you want to go first, or you want me to address it first?
I'll let you have at it.
Okay. All right. Well, can you hear us, Mr. Chairman and board members?
Yes.
Okay. So, as you know, generally the reason you would have a decel lane is because you would expect hundreds of cars to go to a place of business. Here you're talking about a car or two, because the way this amendment is drawn up, you're talking about a staff member coming in, going and picking up a dog and bringing it back. And immediately it's just going to be Alex and then maybe another employee. And I think state license even caps you at 40 dogs. So this is literally they go out, pick up the dog and bring it back. Any business like this is not going to have traffic. I mean, it's somebody coming back to a house with a dog. And the idea that you're going to have to pay $125,000, which we showed you that prior estimate from the company that would deal with it, makes it impossible. And small businesses out of the house, I mean, frankly, we just don't think that it should be burdening, whether it's this person who's moving to the house or somebody that's not moving to the house or people in Henry County in general. We think this is just beyond overburdensome for small businesses in Henry County, and hope that the board will go, you know, it is. And I love, Henry County's got the best staff in the state. I mean, they just do, and they're doing what's required by their ordinances. And we're asking you to change that ordinance because it is beyond burdensome to all kinds of occupations. Hopefully Alex can achieve his dream of just taking care of dogs he loves by picking them up, bringing them back one car or two cars at a time. And so we'd ask you to favorably pass that amendment. Anything, John, that you think we need to add?
Just ask him to put in
Okay. Okay, well, does anything additional you guys would like to add to that?
So if I could jump in as well, on top of that, the overall goal of mine here is to maintain the overall aspect that this is going to be a residence. So with the additional requirements of that parking lot, that turning our 0.2 of a mile long driveway into a 2-lane street, we feel that fundamentally changes the very nature of the property itself, and sort of becomes a self what's the word, a self-causing prophecy, a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I'm trying to do whatever I can to avoid negatively impacting both my neighbors and the overall surrounding area.
Okay.
I guess the last thing we'd say is, I mean, there's literally less cars coming into this than what a family of 5 would have. And it's costing for a business out of a house $125,000 before they start spending on any other overhead. Doesn't seem fair.
And to note, the family of 5 number comes, the house is a 4-bedroom house, so it's completely realistic to have potentially you have a family with older kids, 1 kid home from college working. It's very realistic to potentially have 5 people driving at once. This won't come anywhere near that.
Okay.
At any point.
All right. Well, does the board have questions for the applicant? Okay. I guess I have one question for the applicant now. You indicate that you would be picking the dogs up or picking the animals up. At any point, do you anticipate the owners wanting to visit the facility?
I don't anticipate that. No. My preference is to not. My preference is to minimize the traffic in and out of the facility, or the property, I should say. And I'm more than happy to share film and photos or whatever that owner would require before sending their dog, trusting us with their dogs.
Well, I asked that question because I know pet owners, and pet owners are very protective. Pets are their kids. So, and most people want to see where their pets are going, and that's why I asked that question. So, I'm kind of curious how you would market that.
Yes, sir.
And,
That is part of the market strategy that I mentioned before, which is word of mouth. People are more willing to trust people they know, their friends, and they're willing to trust and say, well, this person is familiar with this business, and we know that our dog goes there. And Alex comes by and picks up our dog every Tuesday, and they're as happy as they be, and they're exhausted when they come home, and be able to trust their friends and family with their dog's safety and health. And I can give you I can give you my word that I will be taking excellent care and putting the dogs in a good position the entirety of the time that I'm caring for them.
okay,
And
understood.
The only thing I'd add to that is our family, which is a family of 5. When we go out of town, we use a lady who does this exact same thing, takes our dogs to a farm, and we've never seen the farm, but the reason we use the service is because a friend of ours used them and said, oh, she's great. Dogs come back happy. And that's what we ended up doing. So usually it's from oftentimes a busy family that's doing something and has to make sure that their dog's in a loving place, but have got to deal with their kids and their family elsewhere too.
Okay. All right. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant?
I just want to know.
I have a question for the staff when that's appropriate.
Okay, let's go with Miss Walker. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if this is if for a commercial property, that this is what IDOT has, that they have to have this deceleration lane, won't IDOT have to do something to change it, or for us to change it?
That question would be, I would assume, for staff.
I think that Kenton, maybe Stacy wants to chime in. I think the issue here, it's going to be a technicality. If there is a precedent, a text amendment change request or a text amendment request, is there a precedent for that? And then also, how often does the zoning advisory board, if ever, make a change to the Unified Land Development Code? I think we might want to look at that, and Stacy might want to answer that.
Where is Stacy?
Yes, ma'am, Ms. King. I do not recall the last time that an applicant made a request to change the Unified Land Development Code that moved forward to the Board of Commissioners for their consideration. The last one, I believe, was in District 1 on either Seabolt Road or Seabolt Drive, and the applicant ended up dropping the request. But in this hearing, what the Zoning Advisory Board is being asked to do is to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. So there will be another hearing before the Board of Commissioners for their final determination. And was there another question about requiring ACL, decel lanes? I would need for that question to be repeated if that's okay.
Mhm. Well, I know Ms. Randolph had a question, and I believe it's for staff. Am I correct, Ms. Randolph?
That is correct. When
Okay.
it's not about the lane specifically, it's a little bit broader than that.
Okay.
Stacy, I am wondering, so we're making a policy change recommendation for the Unified Land Development Code. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So this would apply to all properties in the future that want to use their land for this purpose.
Yes, ma'am.
And in that case, are there, current landowners, we have to make policy for everyone, not just the wonderful people that come before us. So therefore, their property right now, I know kennels, or it also states veterans facilities and veterinary clinics, animal hospitals, and stables, that we would be looking at, this would be applying to them and any changes that would be impacted.
So the applicant has submitted to the county in track change format the change that they're requesting, and it's simply in addition to section 4.03.01B. And we're going to illustrate that. Okay, so, and the text is small, so I'd be pleased to go through it, but what it says is that commercial kennels and other animal care facilities in the RA zoning district shall not be subject to the site design and infrastructure improvement requirements applicable to commercial uses and developments where the animals are taken to and from the property by a facility employee or employees, and the facility will not be accessed by customers or the general public. So this is actually very narrowly tailored to this type of use. It wouldn't affect general commercial businesses at all, just animal care facilities in the RA zoning district that meet those standards. The thing is, I would imagine that it's next to impossible to monitor these businesses to make sure that this is actually what is happening. And it's staff's recommendation that we don't go with this request.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
It opens
Okay.
the door. It opens the door.
Okay. Any additional questions for staff or the applicant?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. VM, and we'll come back to Ms. Randolph.
All right. In the wording of this, it says, let's see, the RA zone district shall not be subject to site design and infrastructure improvement requirements applicable to commercial uses and developments. Well, if they're not subject to that, then what are the site development, design and that? What are the rules?
So in that case, Mr. VM, it would basically be residential, I would suppose, but not commercial.
Yeah, I think, the way this is worded, it's like, here, let's eliminate everything, but it didn't say go back with what. And that's a very scary thing to me. Oh.
Okay. All right, Ms. Randolph.
Thank you, Chairman. And one last question to staff from me is, if we vote in agreement with staff recommendation of denial, it is going to the commission for their final consideration.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay, so one way or the other, this is going to the county commission.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that clarification.
Uh-huh.
Okay. If there is no further questions, we would like to allot 10 minutes for anyone wishing to speak in opposition. And Karis, do we have anyone in the waiting room?
No, sir.
Okay. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. If not, we'd like to call the case, please.
No, I can't hear anything.
They're not doing it.
It was muted, I think, the whole time.
Yeah.
It was muted.
I was just practicing, sorry. ULDC, our Unified Land Development Code Amendment, ULDC AM 2003, Alexander Killebrew of Atlanta, Georgia, requests to amend multiple sections of the Henry County Unified Land Development Code, ULDC, regulating animal care facilities in the RA Residential Agricultural Zoning District. This is countywide, presented by Kenta Lanham, Planner 2.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion based on staff recommendation that we deny.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries. All right, motion carries. Call the next case, please.
Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Comp AM 2003, Harrison Street Partners LLC of Atlanta, Georgia, request an amendment to the comprehensive plan for property located on Loop Road, west of Westridge Parkway and land lot 208 of the 6th District. The property consists of 11.643 plus or minus acres, and the request is to amend the future land use map designation for commercial to high-density residential. This is in District 2. This is presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisil, Chief Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to attempt to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay. This request before you is located in the West Ridge Plan Development, as illustrated on the screen and also in your exhibit books. It's outlined in green. And for those who may know the area, this is the portion of the Loop Road cul-de-sac immediately behind an existing office building. And so this property is undeveloped at the current time, and it backs up to the existing Publix shopping center. the future land use map currently shows this property, which was intended to be an office pod of the West Ridge planned development, as commercial on the future land use map, just like the property along the balance of Loop Road all the way back to Highway 20, and including the shopping center and the out parcels there at the intersection of Highway 20 and West Ridge Parkway. The applicant's request is to change this future land use map from commercial to medium density residential in order to support a rezoning request from planned development office pod to residential multifamily for the development of the townhomes or townhome condos, which will be the subject of our next hearing. This hearing will deal exclusively with changing the future land use map. And similarly to the request to change the Unified Land Development Code, both the request to change the future land use map as well as the zoning would require a recommendation from this zoning advisory board, but both of these will go on to the Board of Commissioners at a later date for the final decision. Staff did take a look at the Henry County future community map. We did note that this property is included as part of the suburban area, which is appropriate for office development, and it may actually be appropriate for townhome development in the areas that it's planned to be in. The issue that staff is having is that the West Ridge planned development has all been designated at one time for a great number of years. And it's very possible that property owners have bought in these neighborhoods with the understanding of what these various pods will look like in the future. And this request would very much change that. It would change the density, it would change the traffic patterns and so forth. So we've considered these various aspects of the applicant's request, and we do recommend denial of the applicant's request. And I'd be pleased to answer questions.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff?
Approximately how many townhomes were they going to build there? Do you know?
Yes, ma'am. I can find that. One moment, please. And while I'm looking, Ms. Walker, let me just say that we will get in depth into this in the next hearing.
Oh, okay.
But we're looking at 107 townhomes on approximately 11.643 acres. And we're looking at a net density of 9.094 dwelling units per acre.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, let me state at this time, based upon Ms. Walker's question, that the applicant is actually requesting a change to high-density residential, which is necessary to have over 6 dwelling units per acre. So thank you, Ms. Walker, for making that point. I appreciate that, and I regret the error.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions for staff? If not, we'd like the applicant to state your name and address for the record and add to anything staff, do you have anything to add to staff recommendation?
I do. Thank you, Zoning Board. It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Patrick Chesser. I'm at 660 Fair Oaks Manor in Atlanta, and I'm with Harrison Avenue Partners. Can you please do me the favor and unmute Chris Harrell of Summit Engineering as well? Mr. Glaze, if you see him, I think he should be in here. But if you're doing that, as you're doing that, I respect the plan, the master use plan that was drafted in 1999, but believe this application is suitable and complementary to both the publics and the commercial fronting Highway 20 and the 400 plus single family homes of the reserve behind it. It seems to be a sensible transition. The 1999 plan calls for OI, office, and industrial in this particular 11-acre location. I know both office and industrial. I've developed both. 11 acres is too small for real industrial unless you want self-storage, which I imagine the neighbors do not. And the Henry County office market is not viable at this location necessarily. I mean, as you know, being residents, it is primarily in the Eagles Landing cluster with most of the office. And there's currently 270,000 square feet of office located in and around Piedmont off Eagles Landing. And if this land earmarked office may stay raw for potentially in perpetuity, or at least until someone can eventually rezone for residential of some form. Publix has effectively blocked this land off from being viable commercial effectively. And we're not asking, respectfully, we're not asking 24 an acre type apartment deal or anything that's similar to right over the city limit line across from Westridge. We're not asking for the 16 an acre that's allowed us by the highest density in Henry County Unincorporated. We're just proposing less than 10 an acre of these units that will be fully sprinkled and won't exceed 2 stories. And another point is these are age targeted units. We target an average age of 55 and we have pro forma'd about $3,500 a unit a year in taxes for these. And don't know, could be more, but that's basically $385,000 of annual taxes versus the raw land you have now that people are so conveniently using as a dumping ground, which I've cleaned up a couple of times since having it under contract. We have met with other parts of the city. Engineering, traffic, and fire have all agreed, and this may be discussed in the next in the next application or the zoning application, have all agreed this is a viable site as drawn. It's just pending zoning. And should zoning or an appropriate architectural review board find certain elevations and materials preferable, we will comply to the desires of the community. We're not afraid to do that and fully expect to do so. So I just want to thank you all for my time, and I'll yield the rest of mine for somebody else. Chris, I don't know if you want to come over the top and layer in anything.
Well, I appreciate that. My name is Chris Harrell. I'm with Summit Engineering. And I would like to just add that I think that it is appropriate planning for you to have a transitional use from the high density commercial that we're directly adjacent to the Publix to the medium density residential that is adjacent to this parcel. So I think from a planning standpoint, you have to look at what the transition is and what makes sense. And so you're tasked here with making a change to the land use map, and that is correct. But I think this is an appropriate change, in my opinion. So we're talking about going from a commercial use to this project, which would be an attached townhome use to the neighbors that are adjacent. Again, we'll talk maybe about this more in the zoning case, but there are appropriate buffers, there are appropriate setbacks and things like that. Whereas what is currently allowed arguably is a significantly a less appropriate use adjacent to the residential subdivision that we're next to. So that's pretty much the land use issue.
Okay. Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicants?
I have a comment.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to your argument is valid. You have a valid case, I think. You make some good points. And I'm not opposed to changing something. However, I do rely very heavily on staff recommendation. And that may be where the end result, that may be what leads to the end result here, just so that you know that. I'm just going to say that. I'll just throw that out. I would be inclined to let the commissioners, if they wanted to make such a change, which is a pretty big change, to make that decision. That's just what I'm thinking. I'm being honest with you. I do rely very heavily on staff recommendation because that is valid too. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King. Any additional questions or comments for?
I would like to make a comment if I may. Commissioner King, I absolutely appreciate your position. I will say though that I think staff is maybe handcuffed, might be the right word. They have to give you recommendations based on the existing code, and I would again argue that this might be a downzoning. This might be actually a request to reduce the intensity of development on this property. And so the staff, again, I think defers to the existing ordinances, to the existing codes and things like that. I think it is incumbent on this board to look at each case and, potentially to make a decision based on each property and each development as it comes along. And I am not in any way, suggesting the staff is incorrect here. I think they are telling you what the future land use map is. And please, they have to look at what past ordinance colors their recommendation to you.
Okay.
I mean, I agree to a certain extent. Their hands are tied because they have to go by the book in that regard. And so, really, what you're looking at is for that little piece of property stuck there behind the Publix, forever doomed behind the Publix.
Yes, ma'am.
Trapped. Is potential some sort of commercial or office, not likely, versus a viable residential type. It's not a house, but it's a townhouse, but it's residential.
Yes,
so,
ma'am.
I mean, I don't disagree with anything that you've said, and I appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. King. Do anyone else have any further questions for staff or for the applicant? Any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. At this time, we've used up to 10 minutes there for anyone wishing to speak in favor. Do we have anyone in the
I still
waiting
have a
room
question
wishing
for the applicant.
Okay.
What studies did you make based on that based your decision to try to develop this this tract as townhomes? Was there some economic studies that would indicate the changing conditions?
If I may, sir, nothing exhaustive. I did. I simply just ran comps and sales comps and certain things in the neighborhood, and I see the changing demographics and growth in rent and growth in purchase prices and growth and it's just a very dynamic area. And if you've read the reports, Henry County is you guys you're truly sitting on on a great and great municipality in terms of it's got one of the highest growth rates in the country. I think it's in the top 10 county in the entire country. So I find a Publix that it's sits adjacent to that I know Publix and they tell me per square foot it's a high performing store. They plan to keep it going, and that's going to be one of their winners. Publix is not afraid to shut a store down where they've made a bad decision. This isn't one of them. And so Publix does exhaustive studies on where the path is going, and I respect what they do. So I just happen to find something at Publix, and I'm pleased to death to have it.
I think you also got to look at the success of the neighborhoods just behind us. Again, the small lot subdivisions that are adjacent on Anniston Drive and, that are literally next door to us have been extremely successful. Whereas this property, a dumping ground, if you will, for years and years.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Richard?
Yes. Could staff point out on the maps or otherwise what the zoning is of some of the other residential developments that are on the Loop Road that have been built in the West Ridge area?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're muted, Stacy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay, Mr. Risher, I am illustrating the zoning map at this time. And so what we're looking at is this whole area that is the West Ridge planned development on both sides of Highway 20 are indicated in this pink or lavender color, and that stands for planned development. The planned development is divided up into pods. So the public shopping center is a commercial pod, which would allow for restaurants and retail and so forth. The subject property is part of a office pod, which simply allows for office uses. And then further along Westridge Parkway, you get into the single family, which the lot sizes, if I remember correctly, may correspond with R2, R3, and so forth. So we do believe in the transect, and we do believe in planning theory. And I think that it's good planning to bring down the intensity of development the further away you get from the intersection of Westridge Parkway with Highway 20. And so it may be that townhomes are more intensive than single family. So perhaps, and certainly the applicant is making the case that that is appropriate in between single family and commercial retail. But, and staff has considered that, because we do try to be objective. And Ms. King, as you said, we're not afraid to recommend change. But we put a lot of stock in the fact that this entire area is a single planned development, and people have invested in this area in homes, businesses, and otherwise, based upon the fact that they know what is planned for this area. And to change that would be a very significant change, and we didn't take that lightly, and we've determined not to recommend approval. And so that's staff's position.
Can you
one other question is when was the current comprehensive plan when was it adopted by the Board of Commissioners? It was fairly recent, I believe.
1999.
It was in 2018. And the future land use map that's a part of that 2018 comprehensive plan is illustrated. It is showing the non-residential areas as being commercial, and that does include the subject property.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, we don't have any additional questions. Karis, do we have anyone in the waiting room and speaking in opposition?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
James is going to assist me with that.
Okay. Well, we're gonna.
Mr. Chair, while we're waiting, let me just state for the record that the Planning and Zoning Department has received a number of petitions in opposition of both the comprehensive plan amendment as well as the rezoning.
Oh, okay. All right. Karis, do you know how many people we have in the waiting room?
There are approximately 12. So we just want to reiterate that this is a shared 10 minutes.
Right, exactly.
We did bring in Janet Coldabella. Excuse me if I pronounced that incorrectly. But she seems to be, nope, she is still muted now. But she was.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Miss Cartabella, I want to emphasize that you have 10, the group has a total of 10 minutes to state your opposition.
Okay, so I'm very concise. My property, my address is 110 Ivy Trace. My property, this property is literally in my backyard. So the concern for me was exactly what was pointed out before about the density of the population that will occupy that property, because we live in all, let's say, single family homes. My property is half an acre, so we have 2 residents per acre, and I hear now a density of 9. So that is a concern about how the look and feel will be of our living space and community area in the future with this development, and that's why we were opposing to that higher density, let's say, project plan. So that is my statement.
All right, thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
This is Patrick Pinataro from the retreat part. It's 55 and over. When my wife and I moved here about 7 years ago, we researched the area. Can you hear me all right?
We hear you.
Okay. We moved, of course, even from Sun City, from Griffin there, because there were lower taxes, lower homeowner fees, lower water and sewer fees, and the closeness to the services like Publix that you mentioned. We researched the area and we looked at the land map use there and said, oh, this is a great spot. And of course, with the goods and services we have around us, like with Southgate and such, you know, it's a great spot to be in. For the most part, the residents of our community show pride in the ownership and we enjoy our lifestyle. More specifically, the homeowners of the retreat at Westwich, a 55 and plus community, have worked hard to invest in our life's work here. Our desire to see our investment protected by the quality of life maintained. The proposed project would further stress the area's services and property values. We feel that the RM zoning would stress that area, and an R1 or some other residential would be better choice for Ferris Road area. The majority of the residents in our Westridge community, which consists of the arbors, you've already heard, the hedges, the ivies, the park, rolling meadows, and the retreat, are of course opposed to the rezoning of the area. I'm glad the zoning at this point recommendation is the same. The majority of the residents, which we said, any family, individual, high density, multifamily townhouses are a poor investment in comparison to single family homes in the area. Within 15 minutes, you have many other apartments and townhouses that are already near us off of Highway 20 and off of Nail Road. So, of course, if you add 107 other homes there instead of what a residential area would be, the traffic congestion on Westridge is even going to be worse, which is another reason you've already mentioned. A single family home offers a chance to meet the neighbors while doing yard work or taking a stroll or just being involved in the social community activities, working together. Thus, the homeowners of the Westridge communities want to preserve this type of area, as you mentioned before. The entire social makeup of our community benefits by this. Thank you for your services to Henry County and our district, and your attention to our objection to the proposed rezoning. As you know, the intersection of Loop and Westridge Parkway adjacent to the retreat at Westridge. And as you mentioned before, we did have at least 99 signatures in opposition from just our Westridge subdivision of the retreat, and I'm sure you received others from our neighbors. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Karis, do we have anyone else? Well,
yes, sir. My name is Kathy McGinn. I live at 2009 Parador Bend in the parks at Westridge.
Okay.
And I've gone around door to door with a number of neighbors trying to get people to sign a petition objecting to this change, and without fail, everyone that we spoke to is against this. We literally had in approximately 2 hours of canvassing, we had probably close to about 60 signatures against this development. This home is more than just a neighborhood to myself and to my boys. This is my entire retirement. I moved here deliberately. I absolutely love this neighborhood. I love my neighbors. I'm out walking every single day. And the developers keep using the phraseology that they're bringing down the intensity of the development. They're not. These 600 square foot townhouses will change the makeup of this community. We live in a community where neighbors wave, they stop, they talk. My boys cut grass for elderly neighbors close by. It's a wonderful community, and we picked this deliberately. I can't thank you enough for giving us the opportunity to speak, and I really appreciate the recommendation of staff. I am someone who understands the value of high density development. I have spoken in support of mixed use zoning in Spalding County when I lived there years ago, if it brings value and improvement to the community. This is not improvement and value for our neighborhood at all. It's going to be a distinct degeneration of the value of our houses. And, you know, it's money in the pockets of the developer, but it's our retirement, it's our investment. This house is all I have. And I would highly recommend that the zoning not be changed. And thank you for the time and the consideration.
thank you. Okay. We have approximately 3.5 minutes left for anyone else wishing to speak in opposition.
My name is Maxine Washington, and I am a resident of Rolling Meadow subdivision. I can appreciate the understanding that we want to develop the vacant land that's surrounding our community. I think we have to be cognizant of the type of development that we decide on. Just as the prior residents has spoken, increasing the density of our community by adding 107 townhouses will just overpopulate our area. So I moved here as well with the understanding that this would be my forever home and my retirement home. The community, it's a wonderful community. And as others say, they have kept up their property. If we increase the population and increase the density, that will ultimately increase the value of our homes. So we understand that improvements have to be made, but there are other types of improvements to the property that can be made that can serve the entire community. So, adding 107 condominiums, and I'm not sure how a $3,500 property tax benefit came about from such small new homes. That seems a bit overestimated to me. But, this is not a development that I can see, and as of my other residents in my community can see, that's going to benefit our property and give us the longevity of the property that we live in currently. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now have about a minute, almost exactly a minute left, minute 29 left. Anyone else?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Brenda Wilson. I'm a resident of the Hedges in the West Ridge community. And I, along with my neighbors, are totally opposed to this new residential development. I understand the desire of the developers to maximize their dollar, being in a great location for the public. However, putting a townhome community next to all of these single residents, not only will it impact the traffic in the area, it will also impact the schools. I've been a resident of this community for 17 years, and I am very proud to say that our property values have maintained even in a downturn in the economy. To put in townhomes, to say that you are going to target 55 and over, in no way, shape, form, or fashion turns that property into a retreat. It does not. And also, looking at that property for townhomes, you leave the door open for investors to come in and buy these properties and turn them into basically apartments. The entire West Ridge community is against this development. We all purchased our homes with the understanding that this community would be maintained. You cannot compare us to Eagles Landing. We are not in Eagles Landing. We are the West Ridge properties here in Henry County, and we are totally opposed to this new development in our backyard.
Okay, thank you. Karis, that completes our time, the 10-minute slot. So at this point, does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chair, is there any time available for rebuttal, if we may?
No, there's not. We've heard your case, and okay. Does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff?
Yes, I have a question of the staff and perhaps the applicant. I think that this board and the staff are not opposed to looking at equally suitable land uses as a departure from the land use plan, but therefore has the applicant looked at possible alternatives to office use, to residential densities such as detached homes in the retreat or the park at West Ridge, which are nearby?
This is the applicant. Can I respond to that?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, thank you for asking that question. I haven't, but after hearing the valid concerns of the neighbors and the good people of the retreat, I would certainly consider it. And it was something, if I felt it could be successful, I could redesign and bring before staff and before the county.
Okay. All right. Mr. Richard, do you have anything else for the applicant or staff?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further questions, we would like to call the case, please.
Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Comp AM 2003, Harrison Street Partners, LLC of Atlanta, Georgia, request an amendment to the comprehensive plan for property located on Loop Road, west of Westridge Parkway and land lot 208 of the 6th District. The property consists of 11.643 plus or minus acres, and the request is to amend the future land use map designation from commercial to high-density residential. This is located in District 2, presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisill, Chief Planner.
Okay, we've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
We do. I would just like to say before I make my motion, I think we would all agree that it is a pretty big request to make a change, to approve a change to the future land use development map. And I'm just going to read to you what I wrote down here a few minutes ago. I think the initial intent of this particular property must be preserved. And in addition, the good faith of the current property owners in the area as to the future use of surrounding property needs to be preserved as well. And for those two reasons, I will go with staff recommendation to deny COMP AM 20-03.
Okay, we have a motion to deny. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Mr. Beam. Any discussion? All in favor? Two.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right. Well, staff, if you will, call the next case, please.
Rezoning RZ 2007 Harrison Street Partners, LLC of Atlanta, Georgia, requested rezoning from PD Plan Development to RM Residential Multifamily for property located on Loop Road, west of Westridge Parkway, in land lot 208 of the 6th District. The property consists of 11.643 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a multifamily residential townhome development located in District 2, presented by Stacy Jordan Rudisill, Chief Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the associated rezoning to the previous hearing regarding the future land use map. So bear with me. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. The subject property is the same. It's the 11.643 plus or minus acres behind the Publix on the portion of Loop Road that's the cul-de-sac behind the office building. The request is to rezone from PD, which is indicated in this pink color, to RM, or our multiple family residential zoning district, to support the development of townhomes or townhouse condominiums. This is the preliminary conceptual site plan. And so this is just an idea of what the development may look like. But basically, we're looking at approximately 107 dwelling units for a net density of 9.9 dwelling units per acre. Staff has considered the applicant's request We've considered the future land use map. As we stated in the previous hearing, we considered the change that was requested to the future land use map. And we've noted the fact that this is a part of a plan development that has been in place for nearly 25 years. And the fact that the property owners in this area have invested based upon the fact that there is a master development plan for West Ridge, and it was not expected to change. And with that, staff does recommend denial of the applicant's request.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff? Okay. We'd like the applicant to come forward, state your name again for the record, and state your case.
Hello, me again, Patrick Chesser, 660 Fair Oaks Manor in Atlanta, with Harrison Avenue Partners. Good evening. I believe, given the outcome of the plan before, I would like to defer this application or request for deferral, if I may, if this is the right form to do that, Stacy.
I'm sorry, you would like to do again? Say again?
I would like to request for deferral of this application, Stacy. If this is the right format to do that, I don't need to waste any further time.
Okay. Well,
if I may, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure I understand clearly. Are you saying that you would like to postpone this item and have the same request come back at a later time, or would you just want to pull the request at this time and regroup and maybe begin again with a different request? Let me understand exactly what you mean, please.
Sure, Stacy, I'm thinking the latter. Understanding that density is the predominant problem of our neighbors behind us, I would pull this request and rethink this plan and dial the density down considerably to be in keeping with everything else, to see if that is indeed an acceptable land use plan. It was a caller, I think, I forget the gentleman's name, but he had I thought, a wonderful suggestion, and that's something I'd certainly entertain or present before you.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, the applicant is able to pull their request at any time before the board takes a motion.
okay. All right, so we're hearing that he's pulling the request and he's asking that the board not make a decision on this rezoning.
Yes, sir, that's my understanding.
Okay. Okay, well, if based on staff recommendation, if he's making that decision, Stacy, do we need to call a vote on this?
No, sir, the applicant has confirmed that this is a withdrawal of the request.
Okay.
And so another request for rezoning or comp plan amendment or what have you would need to start over from the beginning. But this is a withdrawal of the request. There's no reason to call for a motion. The applicant has pulled the request.
Well, Stacy, if I may, I'm sorry to interject, if I could. Would that be a complete restart, Stacy, or is it possible to amend the application that I have with a deferral?
I think the problem that we're having is that deferral is not defined in our ULDC. We typically deal with someone wanting to postpone their case or to straight up withdraw it. If it's withdrawn, it goes away. The case number is closed and you would need to begin again all the way from the beginning. If you want to just postpone it at this time and maybe regroup and let us know how you want to move forward in the future, then that would be just fine too. We'll just postpone it at this time if that's what you mean.
Let me do that, Stacy, if I may, please. I'd like to hang on if I can and regroup.
Okay, and so at a later date, if the applicant decides to modify the request and to move forward at a later date, we will advertise and post the property just as we did this time, Mr. Chair.
Good news. Thank you.
Okay. Well, in that case then, Stacy, this meeting is, as I call for a motion to adjourn. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Continue to be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.